Good morning. Hi guys. It's Thursday morning, and a very early Thursday morning to you if you are not here on the eastern half of the United States. So hope you've got your coffee this morning and are ready to create something fun. Got a fun project today, and we're using some of everything, it feels like. Not really, but we are using a lot of different elements in today's project, and even though that is the case, we are still keeping it pretty simple, which I love, right? I love it when you can incorporate all kinds of goodness and make something beautiful and have instant gratification, and it doesn't cause you to use your sentence enhancers or throw things across the room. That is always a plus. Particularly when you start working in the morning, right? I don't know about you guys. I'm not much of a morning person, so. Good morning. Good morning, Tina. Good morning, Lori. Hey, guys. How are ya? It's good to see you. Hey, Rosalinda, Gloria. How's everybody's week been so far? Hey, Joan. It's been a long week for me. Yesterday, oh, somebody's mad. I'm sorry, don't be mad. We just got started. No grumpy faces this early. So, what was I going to even say? Oh gosh, that just kind of threw me off there a little bit. So this week has been a long one for sure. And yesterday by about 6 o'clock, I was ready for bed. You ever have days like that? I do. Yesterday was one of those. Yay, got your coffee. Life is great, right? I know, life is weird, but we're still making the best of it, right? Hey, Susie, good morning. Good morning, Diane. How are you? So good to see you guys. So let's do a little housekeeping like we always do before we get started with today's project. And that is going over the weekly deals for the week. So we have a buy one, get one 50% off on boho beads. And you guys, I know that there are a lot of you out there that collect the boho beads, and these sales, when it comes to the boho beads, are the perfect opportunity to kind of stock up on them. And the boho beads are always kind of like morphing and changing. So if you see one now that you want, if you see a set now that you want, don't wait to get it because it may not be there, right? They're usually in limited supply because they are exclusive items. So now is your chance to really take advantage of that. So the coupon code for that is BOHO50. There are no spaces in that. And then our second weekly deal is a free tassel set with every $35 in your cart. And the code for that is tassel time. Again, no spaces. Hey, Michelle, how are ya? So the tassel set with every $35 means that you do $35 in your cart, you're going to get a tassel set, but then if you spend an additional $35, you're going to get an additional tassel set, which is a really cool way to use a coupon code. So keep that in mind. Good morning, Miss Meredith. Hey, we're using seed beads today, Meredith. Yeah, we are. Got you on my mind. All right, last but not least, we have $10 off Magical Mystery Bead Boxes, and the code for that is mystery. And that wraps up our weekly deals, which there's always three. Well, not always, but a lot of times there's three, and they're always really good ones. So I always have a really hard time picking out the one that I like the most. But I gotta say that boho bead deal is a really good one, and I cannot stress enough that if there's a boho bead set that you see, get it now, don't wait, because they don't stick around. People buy those up like crazy. So get those now, you guys. All right, so for today's project, we are, like I said, keeping it kind of simple, and hopefully the results, I say hopefully because I haven't actually executed this project. You guys know sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's not. But we are we're going to put together a necklace, and we're going to use one of these gorgeous Designed by Me strands. You guys, I cannot get enough of these glass bead strands. This one might be my favorite out of all of them. It's really hard to tell though. Those of you who were participating in Jesse James Bead Summer Camp with us, you got a blue Designed by Me strand in your summer camp goodie bag. This is one of the others. Well, there are several, but this is one of the other strands. And I don't know, I can't seem to pick which one is my favorite, but right now I'm really, really feeling this one. This one is called Beach Tan, I believe, and it absolutely is very beachy. However, because of this color that we've got going on here, that kind of golden shadow, you can absolutely rock this all through the fall and the winter. So I thought this would be a really cool strand to use, but dang, just look at it. I mean, that's some good stuff. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Design by Me collection, this is the Jesse James Beads collection that is available at some Walmarts. Not all Walmarts, but most of them. And if you are not able to get your hands on these at Walmart, you can get these on the Jesse James Beads website anytime. There are strands and there are mini mixes, and you guys, they are affordably priced. But don't be deterred by that. Don't look at the price tag and be like, well, the quality. No. These are gorgeous and the quality is top notch. Like glass beads, Jesse James Beads rocks glass beads, and these, the facets on them are stunning. So we're going to use one of those strands, and we're going to mix in some of the seed beads with this. Now, don't worry, those of you who are not seed beaters. We're actually going to do some stringing with our seed beads, so we're not doing anything crazy with them, but I feel like they would be a really pretty accent to this strand, so that's what we're going to use. I have, let me see, I want to be sure that I get the name of this one right because it's not in the packaging. I had to pull it all out and put it in little baggies, so I just want to be sure. So this one is called Add a Little Sparkle, and of course it comes in the 3-tiered pack, but mine has been put in the little bags. So I thought that this would be a really good accent to go with our strand. However, the vintage vibes would also be a great choice, right? So when it comes to the seed beads, you can really kind of mix and match with your Jesse James Bead strands and with your mixes. They, the 3-tier mixes really kind of go well with everything. And there's a collection of those, like the greens or the blues or the pinks or the purples, that will go with just about anything. So yeah, we're going to use seed beads. We're just going to string them. I just want to show you guys that even if you're not a seed beater, that there is still a place for seed beads in your jewelry designs. So we're going to do kind of a faux double strand kind of design today. And last but not least, we're going to use some gorgeous fairy silk. And I'm using the white just because I feel like that's going to be the perfect kind of color combination. We're going to use the fairy silk as the length for our necklace. So we're not doing anything like major with the fairy silk, but it is going to be a beautiful accent to this piece, and any of the fairy silks can work in the same kind of situation. So whether or not this is your color palette or not, you could pick the blue Design by Me strand and go with some of the blue seed beads and then find a fairy silk strand that is going to match. So we're going to keep it simple. We're going to do some crimping, we're going to do some stringing, and I don't think there's any wire wrapping involved today at all, which is a shocker because I usually go with that, but not today, not today. We're into instant gratification today. So let's get to it. Let's get down on the mat and get started, you guys. All right, so here is that strand. Let me move you guys down just a little bit. Hey, Susie. All right, let me unplug too because cords are kind of in the way here. All right, so this is the strand, absolutely stunning. Sorry, you guys are still kind of wibbly wobbly there. All right, so just getting a good look at this guy because we are gonna free the beads. We're gonna take everything off that strand. I am gonna try to keep the strand intact as much as possible, but still add seed beads to this, okay? So that's the strand that we're working with. We're going to unfortunately have to use our ugly cream colored bead mat because we are going to be incorporating seed beads. And you guys know they will not stick to my felt little pad here. So we're going to use the bead mat that I just absolutely despise. But it's necessary evil. So I'm just going to dump out some of these seed beads so that we can get started. But we probably we'll need some more of these, perhaps. I don't know, like I said, I haven't actually executed this design. I know what it's going to be. I know what the steps are, but I haven't put it together, which could be a complete disaster, but I doubt it. I doubt it. And then we've got our fairy silk. All right, so for the project, what you're going to need is you are going to need some bead stringing wire. I'm using some 19 strands. Let me grab my crimps real quick. Forgot to put those over here. Don't know why. Oh no, what have I done? All right, hold on. Lost my crimp beads there, you guys. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're going to be using some 19 strand bead stringing wire. I'm using the gold color just in case you happen to see any of this sneaking through. And I've got about 24 inches here. Just want to be sure that I have plenty of this. We're actually going to fold this in half to make it double. So realistically, we'll be working with about 12 inches, 2 strands of 12 inches. Okay. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to create one of those seed bead loops, and that I don't know how to explain it. Those of you who watched Meredith recently, she did one of these seed bead loops. It was also included in our daisy chain project over during summer camp. So we're going to start out with a seed bead loop. I just need one end of my bead stringing wire. I'm just kind of holding on to the other end because I don't want my seed beads to slip off, okay? And we're just going to put on some seed beads here, enough to make ourselves a loop out of them. And you'll see what I mean in just a second. And actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and thread a crimp bead on. I don't want to forget that part. So go ahead and thread a crimp. That's what's going to keep our loop together. And I'll show you what I mean. So let the crimp be your very first bead. Right? All right, now as far as the loop and the seed beads are concerned, you can do this in a pattern if you want to. You can make bead soup out of this. It is completely up to you. I'm going to do just a little kind of pattern here with 4 of each color and go all the way around. And we're going to kind of measure as we go. There's no actual measurement to this, but I do want to keep an eye on how many beads I've got and what size loop. I want a good size loop. Okay. So how do you guys use your seed beads in your designs? I know there are a lot of you that are seed beaters, but those of you who are not seed beaters, who have grabbed some packs of the Toho size 11s from Jesse James Beads, what are you doing with those in your designs? There are so many different ways that you can incorporate a seed bead. It makes a great spacer. It's a good little accent. And so I like to know what it is that you guys are doing with them. All right, so now we're just gonna check here, because our goal, of course, is to make a loop out of our seed beads. And I want that loop to be fairly large. I don't want it to be huge, but I want it to be a decent size. I'm gonna give it 4 more seed beads. Joan and I actually were talking about this not too long ago. Joan and I have been playing, well, Joan in particular has been playing with scrimps instead of crimps the last couple of days. I'm just reading her comment here. And she said, I'm absolutely loving them. So then she and I proceeded to have a conversation about those. Are you guys familiar with scrimps? They're a really awesome bead-along product that I really would like to use more often. So I'm going to have a little talk with Sarah about that as well, because I feel like those of you who struggle with crimping might have better luck with the scrimps. So all right, so that's going to make a decent sized loop. Now what I want to do is I want to drop all of this kind of to the center of my piece of bead stringing wire here, and then I want to take the other end of my bead stringing wire through the crimp bead going in the same direction. Okay, so basically what we're doing is we're just folding our bead stringing wire in half. Right? We've got a pretty loop here out of our seed beads, and both of our ends of our bead stringing wire are going the same direction through our crimp, whether it's a crimp bead or a crimp tube. Okay. Now we want to crimp this, and once we crimp this, we're actually going to have 2 strands to work with, which is exactly what we want. But we also have a loop here that is going to serve as our connection point between the end of our strand and our fairy silk. So we're going to wrap our fairy silk onto this. Okay, so what you want to do is you just want to come in with your crimp tool, and I'm going to use that back notch. You guys, I don't know why it's blurry. I'm so sorry. It is not blurry on my end, and I get feedback from you guys a lot that my lives are blurry. If anybody out there knows the technical reason why that is happening, please let me know. It seems to not be that way with every single person. So I'm not really sure what the issue is, but I would love to get it solved because I want you guys to be able to see, okay? All right, so I've got my bead stringing wire coming through my crimp bead. Like I said, 2 strands. I want to be sure that the 2 strands are not crossing each other within that crimp bead. That is still super important. Even though we're not crimping in a traditional sense with a finding at the end, we still want to crimp properly, meaning we want our 2 strands to not be crossing within the crimp bead so that when we come down with that tooth on the back notch of our crimper tool, that it's going to come down and further separate those 2 bead stringing wires within the crimp. That's going to keep them from touching each other and causing abrasion, which of course will over time create failure of your jewelry. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to take that back notch on the crimper tool. It's the one that looks like a little piece of macaroni, okay? And we're just going to place our crimp bead into that notch. And I like to use my fingers here to kind of separate out the bead stringing wire just so that I'm very sure that those strands are separated. And then you're just going to squeeze. And when you squeeze, it brings that tooth down in between those bead stringing wires to keep them separated. Now we're going to take that exact same crimp and we're going to place it in the front notch of the crimper tool sideways, and we're just going to give it a good squeeze. This is going to help to kind of tidy up the crimp and make it nice and compact. Okay, and we've got our loop and we've got 2 strands ready to go. Now at this point, if you want to add a crimp cover to this, you absolutely can. I am just not personally a fan of crimp covers, but that doesn't mean that you can't use them. Okay, you absolutely can, and don't think that just because I don't use them doesn't mean anything, right? That's that technique 99 that we were talking about the other night. Just throw the rules out the window, right? That's technique 99. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we are going to cut the end of our strand here, and we're going to start stringing our beads onto one. Actually, we're going to thread it onto 2, both rather, of our strands. Still early, guys. And occasionally we're going to pop some seed beads onto this. So what we're going to do is I just want to transfer the beads from the strand onto our bead stringing wire. So I'm threading our bead onto 2 of the strands, right? So it's just kind of double threaded, right? And I'm going to thread on the next bead, which is a beautiful little rhinestone spacer. Okay, next is a round bead, and all 3 of these so far have gone on to both strands. Okay, now I want to break this up a little bit. We've got a really beautiful geometric shaped bead here that has a nice large surface area. So what we're going to do is we're going to thread that bead onto one of the bead stringing wire strands. Okay. And then we're going to take the other bead stringing wire, and you can see how it's going to lay across the top of that bead. We're going to fill that up with some seed beads, just as an extra little decorative accent to that, okay? And whatever color you want. I'm going to do kind of a combination of all of the colors, I think, but you could stick with just a solid if you wanted to. Completely up to you. This part is definitely up to you and your creativity, right? So I'm just going to take 3 of each one. We'll see how that fits across the top. That might be too many, but we'll find out, right? Or not enough in this case. So it looks like we need probably 3 more. Okay, drop that down, and let's see. So that's going to sit really nicely over the top of our bead, right? And so now I'm going to thread on the next beads, and I'm going to thread onto both strands, and that's really going to just help to lock those seed beads in place. And now I'm kind of wondering maybe we should go across this bead as well. I think we will. So that's the fun part, is kind of deciding like where you want those seed beads to go. So I'm going to take this bead off, okay, and I'm going to thread it just onto one of our strands. And then I want some more seed beads to come across the top. Okay, so again, I'm just going to start adding seed beads and then drop them down, see how many we need. We can take some off if we need to. We can add more if we need to. All right. Go Team 99. Yes. We need t-shirts, you guys. We need some shirts that have all of our funny little sayings. Technique 99 is probably my top favorite right now, for sure. I love it. Everybody can Technique 99. All right, now let's see. That might be enough. It's really just going to kind of depend on where that bead cap is going to sit. So let's thread the bead cap on and see. We can always take it off. That's the great thing about stringing, because stringing is so simple. When it comes to undoing something and changing things up, you don't have to make any major changes, right? So that looks pretty good to me. Right, now I'm just going to thread some beads on to both strands. We're just going to keep going. We're just going to find some places where our seed beads are going to be beautiful little accents, right? Kathleen says, t-shirts, yes, but not pink. Kathleen is not a pink person, you guys. She is not into pink. All right, I'm going to thread this guy onto just one strand, because again, he's got a great little surface area that we can use for our seed beads. And the great thing about this little technique where we're just adding seed beads to this, because the seed beads are so small, they really do act as an accent, and they don't detract from the beauty of the beads, right? They're not stealing the show from the gorgeous glass beads that are there. They're just adding a little extra visual interest, which is nice. Okay, so there's that one. Sue says she's not a pink person either. You know, I'm not particularly a pink person, but there are certain shades of pink that I really, over the years have come to like. All right, here's another opportunity for some seed beads. So let's just thread this guy onto one. And let me back up just a second, because there was a question. Hold on. Terry says she has done this on earrings when she has a bigger stone. Yes. And let's see, the question was, could you use 3 strands and do seed beads front and back? Yes, you absolutely could. You absolutely could. There are so many different things you could do with this simple technique. I just wanted to kind of bring it to your attention in case maybe you never thought to do something like this before with your seed beads. But yeah, once once this is kind of on your radar, then all of a sudden it really kind of opens up the possibilities with the seed beads and adding them to your beautiful strands. So yeah, absolutely. There's no reason why you can't. You can add as many strands as you wanted to. All right, let's add some more seeds here. Raylan says she's a blue person. I'm a blue person. But like I said, there are some shades of pink that I've really grown fond of over the past few years. When I was younger, you would never catch me in pink with pink jewelry, pink anything, but kind of have a soft spot for it now. Okay, we need a few more to go across that guy. Okay, let's add another bead. We're going to add this one to our both strands here. I'm gonna add that to both of those. And change it up a little bit. I'm gonna leave this one without the double strand with the seed beads across the top, maybe. Should I? No, I think I want to add the seed beads too. It's funny, as I thread it on there and then I'm like, oh, well, maybe not, maybe not. So it's a good part though, take it off. And you'll notice that my seed beads, let me hold this up so you guys can see. My seed beads are kind of, they're not alternating perfectly, but see how they're kind of on one side and then on the other side? I don't mind that at all, right? I'm totally okay with that because this is going to be hanging instead of laying flat. So it doesn't matter to me which side the seed beads are running along. However, if this bothers you, you want to thread your seed beads on the same strand every single time, right? You just want to be sure that you crimp. My goodness, I'm reading comments and like trying to think at the same time. I'm sorry. You just want to be sure that you separate out the strands and you keep an eye on the exact strand that's got the seed beads running across it. That's going to keep your seed beads running on the same side of all of the beads instead of kind of back and forth like mine is doing, which it's totally up to you, right? It's going to look beautiful either way. All right, so let's put some seed beads over the top of this one. Bring the seed beads back down here. Okay, and 3 more. All right, and those will lay very beautifully right across the top of that bead. So these would, speaking of earrings, these would make really beautiful earrings, and you could do the exact same technique, right? You can even do this with some wire. So if bead stringing wire is not your thing, you can do the exact same steps here with some German style wire, artistic wire. You're just going to have a little bit more structure. And that also gives you the opportunity to do some wire wrapping, right? Instead of using a crimp, which is what we're going to do at the end. All right, so yeah, that's a really good trick, Judy. Thank you for sharing that. I always forget to mention that, and that works for a lot of different situations. But she says, put nail polish color on the end of a strand you're adding seed beads to get it on the same strand every time. Yeah, so you definitely can mark the end of your strand. Nail polish is a great way. You can also just put like a little dab of permanent marker on there because you're going to trim off at the end. It's not something that's going to be seen. So yeah, that's a really great tip. Thank you for sharing that. All right, now next bead is going to go on both strands. Okay, now we're going to put on one of our, we're getting close to the end here. Go ahead and slide these off so they're just sitting here. We're going to thread on our bead cap on both strands, and then we're going to thread on our glass bead on one, and then let's put some seed beads around it. So again, I'm going to go with 3 of each color, but you can mix this up however you want to. You could just use this a single color out of your 3-tiered mix if you wanted to. Okay, and then we're going to add our bead cap. Hey Trisha, good morning. All right, now some of you are probably like, why on earth did she put the bead caps, like do that way? She could have put the seed beads all the way around the bead cap, and I absolutely could have. I just kind of treated the bead caps like a bead instead of a bead cap, but you can definitely do it however you want to. I honestly, when I was down here doing it, I was not Wasn't thinking it all the way through. But I just want to keep it the same on either side without having to take everything off. So if that bugs you, definitely include the bead caps there and wrap the seed beads around all of those, okay? I know some of you are scratching your head going, what? She's having a morning. Actually started out much better today than I did yesterday. Those of you who were with me yesterday morning on Dress It Up Buttons Facebook Live, I was definitely having a Monday on a Wednesday, like no joke. We made it, and we made a really cute, actually we made 2 really cute projects, but I was having a time yesterday morning. It just started out one of those days where you know you're going to drop things all day and you're going to spill things, and you know how your day gets started and you just know, you just have that feeling. I was definitely having that. Oh, Sue, give your puppy love for us. Thinking happy thoughts for you and your fur baby. Did you get any snacks this week? I didn't get any snacks this week. Maybe that's why I'm off my game. No snacks this week. I'm in need of some snacks. But I tell you what, my friend Kay is, she actually has some chocolate covered gummy bears that she has been talking about bringing. So I might get some snacks at some point. I need to just make a snack run. Like I don't, and those of you who have no idea what we're talking about, please don't think that I like expect people to bring me snacks or send me snacks. I got a P.O. box for Sarah Ellis Designs, and I jokingly said, send me snacks. Not that I'm going to turn them down if you send them to me, but I wasn't serious, you guys. Just like I hope you guys know that I'm not really like bawling my eyes out over Patrick Mahomes, okay? I just needed an excuse to eat a milkshake. All right, so we have added all of the beads to our strand. I know I didn't really walk through those last couple of beads, but I just wanted you guys to see. I feel like we kind of repeated the same steps over and over again. So now we have a little bit of a conundrum here, right? And some of you have been wondering. We are going to need to take our 2 strands down here and bring them down to a single strand. So what we are going to do that is we're actually going to need 2 crimps to do this. And fortunately, our crimps are very small. Robin says y'all can send me snacks anytime. I'm going to Robin's. Send snacks to Robin and I'll be there. I'll intercept. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to bring our 2 strands down to 1 single strand. Okay. And Erica says she's have a running snack list. Oh my gosh, on your pet. I totally should, right? Like my kids and I'm going to thread on one of our crimp beads as we're chatting. My kids and I were talking about how funny it would be to have like a YouTube channel where I just get people to send me snacks from all over the world and I open them and eat them. And you know, and at first it was a joke, and then we looked and there are absolutely YouTube channels where that is the case. And it was like, oh, we really could do that if we wanted to. Like people would watch that. So yeah, send snacks and let's start a YouTube channel, you guys. I'm totally kidding. I would eat your snacks though. All right, so I've thread 1 crimp bead onto both of our strands. Okay, and now we're gonna crimp it. I know that seems weird, but we're gonna crimp it so that we can cut one of these strands off. So we're actually going to have 2 little crimp beads here, but because they're so small and unobtrusive, it's going to be okay, right? You're not going to notice that there are 2 crimp beads here. And in fact, if it bothers you, you could put a crimp cover over both of them. Just use a big crimp cover, right? Instead of like a size 4, use like a 6 if you wanted to, a 5 or a 6. But we're going to do it this way. So I'm going to use that back notch again with the crimper tool. I'm going to place that crimp into that back notch, give it a good squeeze, right, to separate those wires within the crimp. And then I'm going to put that in the very front notch of the crimper tool and squeeze again. And just make sure that our crimp is nice and compact, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off one of these strands because we need to make our loop but we don't need 2 strands to do that. So we're going to trim off, and I'm comfortable doing that because my crimp is nice and secure. So now we just have a single strand, and we're just going to repeat. We're going to create one of these loops that we had on this end. We're going to create the same thing over here on the other end. Okay, so we're going to thread on our seed beads, and this time I'm threading on in groups of 4, but you do this however you want to. Okay, you don't have to follow my steps exactly. That's our technique 99. Wanda said that these seed beads were the perfect match for this, and I have to agree. I feel like this is a really perfect combination, and I think when we see the when you guys see the fairy silk with this too, it's really going to all kind of come together. So don't forget, we're using some of that fairy silk as the length portion of our necklace, and I'm going to use some findings on it, but I'm going to show you. You can just tie it if you want to. All right, let's see, we're getting pretty close here. What have I done? I don't know. I was trying to keep it exactly the same as the other side, but I don't believe it's going to work out that way. Who knows? I get to talking and then things just kind of take on a mind of their own. All right, I don't know if that's going to be the same size or not. And oh my goodness, I completely forgot to thread on the crimp bead, so it doesn't matter. You guys, somebody should have stopped me. Okay, so I just took all of those off of there. I'm gonna thread on a crimp. I forgot. I'm so sorry. Thank you guys for putting up with my silly today. Okay, so thread on your crimp. You're gonna need that guy, right? Thread that on. And let's try this again, all right? So there's those, and then these guys. You have to use, yeah, Erica, you have to use the cap locks. I'm flipping seed beads everywhere. Did you guys see that? You have to use the cap locks to get my attention sometimes, because I get in here and start chatting and stringing, and then Jane is usually on top of that, but she had to go. So I'm having a terrible time with the seed beads now all of a sudden. People did try to stop me. Well, you know, the comments go by so fast, I didn't see them. So that's why I say you have to like yell at me really loud. It's too bad we're not in a Zoom, because you absolutely could. You could stop me and be like, wait, no. So yeah. I don't mind it though. It just goes to show you guys that I am absolutely not perfect at all. I make mistakes. Everybody does. And there are never mistakes that we can't fix, you know? So it's all good. I used to worry about that, about making mistakes on lives. And now I just kind of embrace it because it's real, right? We're all real. None of us are perfect at this. Okay, so we've got all of our seed beads on here. Now that crimp bead that I forgot the first time, we're going to take the tail end of our wire and we are going to stick our wire through there, pull everything down, and we are going to create our loop here. And we need to crimp. Let's see. Motorcraft had a question about adding a third strand. Thank you for yelling at me, Joan. Let me crimp this really quickly and then I'll scroll back up and see. Kathleen says we need assigned designated shooters in each live. Yes, we do. All right, so I've got the wires going through my crimp bead here, and then I'm going to use my crimp tool. We're going to use that back notch and crimp. Okay. And then put it in the first notch and crimp, and then we will trim off the tail because we don't need that. Okay, and again, you can cover those with crimp covers if you want to, but they're so small, nobody is ever going to notice that there's two on one end and one on the other, right? Okay, now let me scroll back and take a look at the question before we finish this necklace up. Okay, shouters. You don't want to shoot anyone. Well, I mean, I knew what you meant. Okay, let me scroll back here. Looking back. See beads, carpet enhancers. Yes, they are. Oh, my carpet is covered. How funny. Angela says she missed the beginning. What kind of wire are you using? I'm using 19 strand gold color bead stringing wire. And let's see. Now I'm seeing where you guys tried to stop me. Okay, so, excuse me. Motorcraft's question was, earlier you said you could use 3 strands. Would using the second crimp be the way to add the third strand in the beginning? And what size crimp is needed for 3 strands? Okay, so here is the answer to your question. So yes, using a second crimp, just like the way that we finished, this would be the exact same way that you would want to start if you were using more than 1 strand. And you want to use as many crimps as the strands that you have, right? So if we start with 2 strands, we're going to need, and well, I mean, if we're making a loop, we don't have to, but if we are using hardware, we've got 2 strands. We need our hardware attached to only 1 strand. So yes, using the second crimp would be where you would add the third strand. Actually, it would be the third crimp would be where you would add it. And your question, what size crimp is needed for 3 strands? I personally don't add more than 1 bead stringing wire to a crimp bead. I always try to bring down however many strands I have down to a single strand, so that at no point am I ever taking more than 2 ends of bead stringing wire through a single crimp. The reason being is because your crimp tool and your crimp tool has that little tooth in it, right, that needs to come down and separate the wires. When you have more than 2 wires running through that crimp bead, it's impossible for the crimp tool and the crimper bead or tube to separate out more than 2 strands, right? So at best, you could have 2 strands on one side and 2 strands on the other of that little tooth, but you've still got strands that are touching each other within the crimp, and that is going to cause abrasion, right? Eventually you're going to wear down those wires within there where they're rubbing up against each other. So personally, I don't do that. I only want to use 2 strands of bead stringing wire, you know what I mean, like 2 ends of bead stringing wire per crimp. But that's not to say that you can't. It's just not something that I endorse, because my goal is for you to make jewelry that's going to last forever. You make it once, it's going to last a lifetime. That's our Beadalon slogan with our Beadalon bead stringing wire. So that is true if you are crimping properly and making sure that you are taking care of that wire. That's another reason, again, why we don't smash our crimps flat, because you're damaging that wire. So having more than 1 on either side of the little tooth here, you're creating some places where your jewelry can fail. So I always try to bring it down to, you know, a single strand that's going in one and out the other for the crimp. I hope that helps. And like I said, it's up to you if you want to. There are large size crimp beads. There are 3s and 4s and 5s where you really can get more than 1 strand through there. It's just not something that I personally do, because I have had some failures with that. And so I hope I helped to answer your question. All right, Motorcraft says, how would you start with the third? Okay, so let's do that real quick. If that's okay with everybody else, let me show you. Okay, so I think I can show you. Now that I'm like on the spot, it's like, oh, maybe not. I wish Meredith was here. Meredith, are you there? Help me out here. All right, so let's see. Let me think. So we would start out with 2, right? And we're going to crimp. Now this is just This is just kind of on the fly, you guys. Yep, Joan, I'm working on it. I don't know how it's going to go, but we're going to see what happens here, okay? Because I know that there is an actual way to do this, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to actually accomplish my goal here. So we're going to crimp the 2 strands here. We've got 2 strands so that I can trim down, and I've only got 1, right? That's where my hardware is going to go. Oh, now, conundrum. Make a loop, add 3rd strand, and then crimp again. Make a loop, add a 3rd strand, and crimp again. I'm confused. Wow, well, now I'm completely stumped, you guys. So, Erica, Erica, do it live. So, I know this is possible, you guys, but I'm just having a hard time understanding what... Okay, no, wait a minute. I love that we can do this together, though, you guys. I really do. So let's start with a loop, and I think this might be what she was saying. Okay, yeah. Okay, I got it. So we're just going to pretend like we were going to make our seed bead loop, right? And we're going to take both ends through our crimp bead going in the same direction, right? Okay, so there's our loop. We're going to crimp it, right? Then we're going to trim off one of these, right? Because we need to add, no we don't. Oh my goodness. That doesn't solve anything. Well, fiddlesticks, you guys. Crimp on the top of the one you just did and add the wire. See, that's what I was thinking. Like, I was thinking if we had the crimp, so I'm so confused right now. Crimp on the top of the one you just did and add the wire. So oh my goodness. Now y'all are teaching me. I love it. Let's try again. So no, because we still would have to cut off one of these. Okay, you guys. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. Okay, because I'm kind of on the spot here, and I feel like I'm really going to mess this up, and I'm having a hard time figuring out the things that y'all are saying to me because I know what you're saying is making sense, but I'm totally getting flustered here. So I think what I'll do is let's finish up this project, okay, and then let me go back through and read your comments, and let me take some pictures and post them over on the Secret Stash group, okay, so that I can actually yeah, that's what I was thinking. Erica says you can only crimp to one of the strands. It would be a bit off-centered. That's what I was trying to avoid, because I know that if you do add a strand after here, right, if I hadn't crimped off the other, if I had not cut off, right, we could thread on another crimp bead, right, just to one of these strands. And this would be a great, so maybe I won't have to. We'll just we'll fake it here, because that's exactly right. So we would thread on a second crimp, but only onto one of the strands, right? Then we would thread on another strand through that crimp. Okay, and we would crimp these two together. One of them is not attached, so that's why, right? And it's going to sit slightly off center, but now you've got 3 strands, okay? This would be the perfect place to add your crimp covers to cover all of this up, so that you don't notice that strand is going to be off centered, right? And at that point, you could actually add as many strands as you wanted to using the same technique. I know that doesn't make a whole lot of sense since it is not actually attached. So let's do, now that I've walked myself through this, I think I can do this without looking completely insane, like I have no idea what I'm doing. But you guys, y'all are the best. I just want you to know. So there was a question that said, what is the secret stash group? So Jesse James Beads we actually have more than one group, a Facebook group, if you're familiar with Facebook groups. We've got a Facebook group called the Secret Stash Group. We also have one called the Magical Mystery Bead Box Group. The Secret Stash Group is just a community of beaders and people who love their Jesse James beads, right? And post their creations. We have, there's a lot of friendship and camaraderie. It's just a really great community of people. So if you're interested, come hang out with us. Okay, so here's what we've got so far, right? I've made my loop. I've got my crimp. I have 2 strands. I'm going to thread a crimp bead onto one of those strands. Okay, a second crimp bead goes onto one. And then I'm going to slide a second strand into that crimp bead. So now there will be 2 strands coming out of that crimp bead. I can trim off after I crimp, which is exactly what I'm going to do. Try to get away from that other strand there. Thank you, Joan, for dropping the link. I appreciate that very, very much. Just a second to get that in there, right? So that's not the most beautiful crimp in the whole world, but now I'm going to trim off that little tail, right? And we've got 3 strands. And yes, they're sitting kind of off-centered, but like I said, if we put a crimp cover over, a large crimp cover over both of them, or just a crimp cover over one of them, it would just look like a bead, right? So you've got 3 strands to work with. This is not the only way to do this technique, obviously, but this was on the fly, you guys helping, so yeah, that would definitely work. You guys, we did it! High fives all around. All right, now let's finish up our necklace here. Gosh, we've learned all kinds of things today, you guys. I love it. I love it. I'm feeling very excited about the rest of the day now. Okay. Wanda says, is there a way to get rid of a bad crimp at the end of your work? That's a really good question. Not necessarily. You can try to kind of squeeze it to the point of breaking with a pair of pliers, but I honestly I can't really endorse that. I would say your best bet is just to restring. I know that's not what you want to hear, but there's really not any shortcuts when it comes to crimping, you know? Okay, so now we have our fairy silk and we want to add this to our necklace as our length. Let me move these seed beads out of the way before we have a huge, huge seed bead disaster, okay? All right, so we have our fairy silk and there are a couple of ways that you can do this. I'm gonna unfortunately have to cut my fairy silk. If I had 2 strands of this, I wouldn't need to. I really hate cutting the fairy silk. That's not my favorite way of doing things, but I need 2 strands for each side of our necklace. However, if you don't want to do it that way, you absolutely can just fold them in half and have it doubled, right? And then tie your 2 ends if you want to. But we're going to use some hardware, so we're actually going to cut ours in half. And again, not my favorite technique, but I just want you to know, it's just like taking the beads off the strand. You just do it. Right? Just do it. Okay, so now I've got 2 pieces of the fairy silk and I'm going to fold those in half. Okay, I'm going to take one of them and fold them in half, and we are going to thread it through the loop on one side of our necklace, and we're just going to take the 2 ends through our loop. So we're just creating a little lark's head knot here. You don't have to. You can just do an overhanded knot if you want. It's completely up to you. I'm just a fan of the lark's head knot. I feel like it looks really pretty. So that's how we're going to attach our fairy silk to our loops. If you wanted to tie a knot and do some wire wrapping here, you absolutely could. But we're not doing any wire wrapping today, which is odd for us. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing over here to the other side, taking my fairy silk, folding it in half, making a loop, and taking my ends through the loop. Ooh, yeah, I like that idea. It might be pretty to make a small wire coil that would fit over them. I love that idea. I love that idea, to cover up the crimps instead of using the crimp covers. All right, so there we go. Now, as far as the necklace and the ends are concerned, okay, this is pretty long. Even though we've cut this fairy silk in half, you could just very easily just tie this on, right? You could just tie a pretty little bow and don't use any hardware. But if you do want to use hardware, I wanted to show you that you can. It's not my favorite, but you know, it is a way to do this. So I'm just going to use a cord end. Okay, cord ends come in all different varieties. This is just what I had on hand. So I'm just going to take my two ends and kind of mush them together, right? I'm going to slide that into the cord end just like so. And then I'm going to put that flap over just like that. And not all cord ends work the same way, okay? So you don't necessarily have to watch this part in particular. Let me grab some pliers. Okay, now I'm going to take either side of the cord ends and use my pliers to flatten that down. Okay. And then I've got a nice loop here where I can add my hardware and my ends are secure, right? That's just if you want to use hardware. A lot of times with the fairy silk, I don't use hardware. I like to just tie it because I feel like it's, you know, it's lacy and it's beautiful and it makes a gorgeous bow. So if I can avoid it, that's what I do. But, you know, sometimes you have a customer maybe that insists on a clasp, and that's okay. You can make it work, right? And the cord ends are a great way to not really damage your fairy silk or ribbon or whatever it is that you're using, if you're going to be using any kind of, you know, fibers for the ends of a necklace. So there we've got two cord ends. Our ends are nice and secure, and we're just going to add some jump rings and a clasp, and our necklace is complete. I'll put it on a bust so that you guys can see it. And then I'll take some pictures of it and get those posted on the blog so that you guys will have this to refer back to if you need a little inspiration. And keep that in mind, you guys, over on the Jessie James Beads website, the blog is full of a wealth of information. There are tons of projects that we have done in the past. If you want to see a project from, you know, a few months back or a couple years back, if you want to, or if you just need some extra inspiration as you're shopping around, okay? So there is that. And the end of our necklace is ready, and look how pretty. I feel like the fairy silk was just the perfect kind of accent to this. I feel like that turned out really, really pretty. So let me put this on a bust, and then I'll turn you guys around so you can see it, and then we will say our goodbyes for the day. And hopefully I've inspired you. Those of you who are not super fans of seed beads, maybe you'll give them a second chance. You never know. Question. What was the question? What was the question? What was the question? Let me turn you around. All right, guys. I'll back up a little bit so you're not going right up my nose. All right, so here is our finished project, and I feel like this is one of those that it's definitely dressy, but I'm always the kind of person, like, I love all sparkle. Sparkle is that's my jam. And so I wear sparkle with my blue jeans. I have on my pajama pants at the moment. I mean, and I'm always sparkly. So I would dress this up, dress it down, just wear what makes you happy, right? It doesn't have to be a special occasion piece, even though this is full of sparkle and very feminine with the fairy silk. All right, so let me back up. Question, what is fairy silk? And then something about the loom. What was the question about the loom? Let me answer the fairy silk for you. So the fairy silk is hand dyed silk that you can get over on the Jessie James Beads website. It is under cord. If you're shopping on the website, it is really luxurious feeling. It's just hand-dyed silk, and the colors are absolutely brilliant. and we use it as often as we can. Sometimes I forget about it. I love to incorporate it into our jewelry designs. It's just a really beautiful pairing with the Jesse James beads. It looks beautiful with the bohos. It looks beautiful with the strands. So if you're into kind of fibers and, you know, ribbons and things like that into your jewelry designs, it's really soft. So a lot of people like sari silk, which I do like sari silk, but this stuff is so soft and luxurious feeling. It really is comfortable to wear as well as being beautiful. All right, let's see. Roma says, can you please tell us about scrimps? I tell you what, let me post in the Secret Stash group about scrimps. I don't want to get really in depth with the scrimps here, just because there are not any available on the Jesse James Beads website, and I feel like that's not really fair. I don't want to talk about something that you guys can't get. However, it is on my radar as far as talking to Sarah about it, because I feel like it is a great alternative for crimping for those of you who struggle with it. So that is definitely like that's on my to-do list of things. I can post some pictures though and let you see how the scrimps work, because they are really, really cool. Let's see. Clarissa says that would be beautiful for a wedding. I agree 100%. Erica says just getting out of the house is a special occasion, so sparkle always works. I agree with that as well. Like I'm not above getting dressed up to go to the mailbox, okay? Like I haven't left the house very much in the past month, so yes. Oh, thank you, Gabriella. I appreciate that so much. So much. So I feel like I missed a question. If I missed a question, you guys, I did not mean to. You guys know the comments go by kind of quickly, so I never want to, you know, make you think that I'm ignoring you or, you know, you guys know my brain goes about 90 miles an hour. I definitely have ADD when it comes to creating. So I apologize if I missed your questions, you guys. I will try to go back and look and answer them if I can. And please don't hesitate to reach out to me or to Sarah James. And you can post your questions on the Secret Stash group if you've got them, because that community is so wonderful. A lot of people there to help answer your questions and give support and encouragement and inspiration. A world of amazing jewelry makers there. So if you're not a part of our group, come hang out with us, right? And yeah, that's it for me, you guys. It's been fun. I hope you've enjoyed this project. I know I learned something today. I hope you learned something as well. And I will see you guys again on Monday for Maker Monday at 7 p.m. Until then, you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.